Reach out to Darlene, but uh, just want to make sure we are recording. We are recording. Good evening. It is the February 5th meeting of the Economic and Community Development Committee. My name is Josh Goldstein, and with me in attendance from the committee are council members Jan Degensheim, Jim Freyer, Ann Wennerstrand, um, Nicole Ayers, and Jalen Seed. Other council members in attendance are council members Richard Dellinger and Broderick Sawyer. Um, and obviously, staff and consultants are here as well. Thank you all for coming. So I'd like to uh, move for acceptance of the minutes for the special meeting of January 12th, 2026. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Uh, Jan? Any additions, corrections, any issues with the minutes? Seeing none, all in favor of accepting the minutes? Um, thank you. Just want to remind committee members vote in committee. Every council member is allowed to participate in committee meetings. But just as a reminder, if you're not a member of the committee, you don't vote in this particular meeting. And obviously, all items that get forwarded to the full council. So just a reminder there. Um, all right. Are there any members of the public who wish to participate and render any public comment tonight? I don't see anyone in the attendees as members of the public, but just as a matter of transparency, just want to, I don't know if Sabrina, there's no one who's like dialed in or anything, right?
Nope, there's no one here and we haven't received anything ahead of time. So,
Okay, well then I'm closing public hearing, the world's fastest public hearing, public participation in history. Um, okay, then under new business, A1, under Economic and Community Development, authorize the Mayor Barbara C. Smith to execute an agreement with Berry, Dunn, McNeil, and Parker, LLC, for project number 4435, Community Development Software and Services, for an amount not to exceed $204,000 for implementation oversight services for a new online permitting and license system. Do I have a motion? And Wennerstrand, thank you. Um, okay, Sabrina, I think, is this you or I don't know exactly who's taking it
it's a
on.
little bit of both me and Steve since we've worked on this project,
Okay, that's what I had a feeling. I just didn't know who's
but
going to take the
Steve
lead
can
here.
go for it. I know he's prepped for this, but Jay was
Right.
supposed to be doing this, but Steve's got it.
Nope. And just as a for everyone else, Jay couldn't be here tonight. So thanks to Sabrina and Steve for stepping in. I just didn't know who was supposed to go first. That's my fault.
I was really hoping Sabrina was prepped for this myself, but I'm happy to chime in and improvise best I can. Um, so kind of, and I'll be brief because I read through what Jay put together and it was pretty thorough, I thought, and kind of got at what the purpose of this was and where things were going. So as you know, we have our contract with Mainstar to do take us into the 21st century and do online permitting for the city, which will be a great step forward for everyone involved. Before we got to this point, the city brought in the firm Barry Dunn to kind of help us navigate the process. And first and foremost, in my mind, was getting us to a point of understanding process because the city currently really doesn't have a good process when it comes to permitting in terms of Department A goes before Department B and so forth, and how the operations flow. So we spent probably a year with Barry Dunn really working on workflow. And then also Barry Dunn really guided us through the process of us getting an RFP out there and working with setting up all the interviews, getting the firms in line, helping us with pitfalls and things we needed to be aware of. So it was just really an invaluable experience for us at this point. And the process involved planning and zoning, economic development, fire marshal, building, health, DPW, TMP, every department that's been involved with the land use process that's going to sign off on a permit or review a plan has been involved. So it's been a really very collaborative and really good effort on everyone's part that was involved. Everybody universally had great things and great experience with Barry Dunn. And the other thing they all expressed was we'd really like to have Barry Dunn stay on board through the implementation process and kind of help us with those same kind of issues, guiding us through taking steps to make sure nothing's missed, and being kind of that point in between with the Main Star and the city, because Jay's kind of spearheading things up now, but he can't devote all his time to this, and it at times it's going to be a very encompassing effort to migrate all the data that we have now with our current system over to the new system, getting all the departments on board and linked up, and just kind of finishing through. So we think they provide an invaluable service, and something that, while it's a cost, we think it's a small cost over the long term, because no matter what we do in the future with the software, the process established through this has just been invaluable. And just on one personal note, I do a lot of oversight of consultants, working with consultants, and Barry Dunn was probably one of the best firms I've ever worked with in terms of overall responsiveness, just the knowledge they brought to it. And we would have a meeting, we would come back like a month later, and there would not be any drop off in terms of their understanding or the facts that they brought to the table. And also just generally keeping us on task, because we were like, hey, if you guys want to get this RFP out in the summer, and in order to get things through your budgeting process and get things on a timeline that you're expecting, you're going to need to perform and get back to us with information. So they were always good about keeping us on task, and we never had an issue with them not having been prepared or anything else. So I just can't speak highly enough of them. Sabrina, I don't know if you want to add anything, but I think that's kind of the overall summary.
Yeah, I think you covered a lot of it, Steve. I just wanted to add in that nobody knows our entirety of our permitting process better than Barry Dunn at this point, just because they've been with us from the beginning. So if you were to ask them how something flows and what we can fix, they know it from front to back. And I think if you were to ask anybody on staff how the process flows from department to department, you'll get different answers from every department head, because we just don't know the intricacies of what all of us do every day. So I think, again, echoing Steve, it's going to be invaluable for them to stay on with us. But again, they kept us on our toes and ready for every meeting that we had. We had very great deadlines set up and timelines set up. So I think they'll be integral for us to make sure that the new consultant team that's going to provide the software isn't going to miss anything that is really important for us. So they're also here. Barry Dunn is also here on the phone with us. So if there's any technical questions that you guys have, they're here to answer them as well, but we'll take questions too.
And I just want to, just before questions, I did want to, I see Councilmember Darlene Young is here. Darlene, I did not see when you got here, but she is here. I see Kevin Price and Joseph Bergion. I don't know if it's Bergeron or Bergion, I'm sorry, from Barry Dunn. I don't know if there's anything you wanted to say before council members have any questions.
I think Steve and Sabrina summed up perfectly, but just to briefly introduce ourselves, my name is Joseph Bergeon. I'm a senior consultant with Barry Dunn. I'm joined by our principal, Kevin Price. We have, over the past year or so, been engaged with the city on business process review, procurement for new community development software. We have arrived at a point in the process now where we are wrapping up contract negotiations with MainStar, who will be the software provider, and transitioning into the implementation of that software, which will be about a year. Our role in this ongoing process would be to provide oversight over the services that MainStar provides, making sure that there are key business improvements that go along with the technology improvements. And certainly as we bring our knowledge in from this selection process, we would have an absolute pleasure to continue our work with the city over the next 12 months.
Thank you very much, Joseph. Do any members of the council have any questions? Councilmember Freyer.
Yeah, thanks very much. I think that I looked at the numbers and the hours, and it looks like you're going to allocate about 70 hours a week or 70 hours a month to this job. That's only about a week and a half. Is that going to be enough coverage, do you believe?
Based on the oversight scope we have a process of governance establishing roles and responsibilities between the city, the software provider, and Barry Dunn. We are positioned to essentially provide first line quality review of what the software vendor is providing. That review process and the number of hours that we factor in for that are based on many projects that we've completed with similar cities and similar software. So certainly with 70 to 80 hours a month budgeted in for that, we feel that that's certainly sufficient to provide the city with everything that it needs to go back to the software vendor and make sure that the implementation is going smoothly throughout.
Is the consultant going to be coming from New Haven, your New Haven office, or some further a distance away?
The consultant that we plan to have primarily involved here would be coming from farther afield. However, Kevin and Price and I are both based in our Portland, Maine office, and we've been down to Norwalk from Portland a number of times. So certainly not too challenging as far as travel goes.
Okay.
Do any of our members have any questions? All I want to do is just add that, it's been great to hear the feedback that the staff's gotten from Barry Dunn. I do know that one of the goals and something that I've spoken with Jay about, I think it's been spoken in our meetings, is the goal here, because I think you said something about implementation taking about a year. It was my understanding that parts of this are going to become available, for use earlier than that. I just wanted to make sure that was clear, or if I'm missing something, but that was my understanding, that it was going to be sort of a phased in process where actually a bunch of this is going to be operational before the end of the year.
That is Jay's goal for sure. And,
Yeah.
and Joe can explain.
I think there are pieces of the process that I think are going to be online a little bit quicker. Like certain permitting processes, maybe not the entire like site plan, large project review. But the entirety of the site should be live in 12 months. But Jay's goal is to get the easier stuff on within like a 6-month time period, which we'll see how it shakes out, but that is the goal.
Okay. Unless there are any additional questions, seeing none, then I'd like to call for the vote. All in favor of advancing this item to the full council? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Jan, are you on? Well, that was unanimous of everyone who voted. So that item passes. Thank you, guys.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it, everybody.
Thank you. Have a good night.
You as
So now B, I think we can, since these are related, I'm going to move both of them at the same time. So transportation, mobility, and parking, I'm going to just read them both then. B1, authorize the mayor, Barbara C. Smith, to execute an agreement between the city of Norwalk and A-Vidi Excavators, LLC, for project TMP 2025-6 South Main Street rail spur and berm removal for an amount not to exceed $849,497, account numbers noted. And 2, authorize the Director of Transportation, Mobility, and Parking to execute orders on the contract between the city of Norwalk and A-Vidi Excavators, LLC, for project TMP 2025-6 South Main Street rail spur and berm removal for a sum not to exceed $84,949.70. Account numbers noted. Do I have a motion? Councilmember Young. Ben, for like the 7th meeting in a row,
Yeah.
we're talking about this project. You're on.
All right. Thank you, Councilman Goldstein. So, I mean, I won't get into the full description of the project because many of you know about the roundabout already. We've spoken at length. Though if you do have any questions, especially since we just had our public information meeting earlier this week, I'd be happy to take them. So this phase one project, the South Main Street rail spur and berm removal, it was an item that was approved at last month's January 13th meeting for VD to take this work on. So those are the two items. One is for the main contract, and then there's a 10% contingency item. That's the second one. So there's a technical correction that we want to make to that item because in the subsequent weeks, just 2 weeks later, we got the additional funding through the municipal grant and aid. That's the $500,000 through state appropriations, which I believe most of you were in attendance for that meeting as well. So that was approved 2 weeks later, unfortunately, after the original contract execution. So we just need to make a technical correction to the original January 13th approval, adding in that second account number to both of those line items.
Thank you, Ben. Does anyone have any questions? Councilmember Seed.
And not a question, just really a comment. It's always good to keep talking about this project. It's such a big project and
Yep.
exciting, especially for that area. And I also just want to highlight Garrett's amazing cartwheel that he did at the information session.
I'll pass it along.
Just celebrating it. So just thanks again for all the great work that you guys are doing.
And we expect him to do that before the full council. I'm just messing around. But
Thank you,
Actually, I
Councilman
was
Seed.
hoping Jim Travis was going to do it.
honestly, I was hoping Dean
That
Prater
would be a
would do
step
it.
up. Yeah. I'll let them know.
All
Thank
right. Does anyone, Councilmember Winterstrand?
Yeah, I just want to join in what Councilmember Seed said and thank you, Ben, for being so thorough in the presentation. The informational session for the public thought was really successful and really good engagement. And looking forward to see what your cartwheel or whatever it's going to be.
It's good. It's gonna be you have to do something next time to top the cartwheel.
Yeah, he's gonna do a backflip.
It's going to go down in
Ooh.
history. So
We'll be training. Yeah. Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Councilmember Young.
Thank you, Council President. So like everybody else said, it was a good presentation, and a much needed project, that wall needed to be gone decades ago, but we're finally here. And so that's a good thing. I was wondering though, is there any benefit to having the design located at the new school, at South Norwalk School, just so that the parents, as they come in or anyone coming into the building, kind of can look at the project?
That is a good thought. I would certainly I tomorrow I can call up the principal and the office there to see if they'd be willing to host that maybe in their lobby. We could have an easel with the concept design.
And I think that's an exciting way to just get the kids, excited about all the work. I mean, the work may not start while they're there or come back, but they'll see something taking place, and it would be good, just a good, I don't know,
Yeah.
civic.
I think it's good for just education in general, just to know,
Right.
The civic process and
Right.
Things don't just appear. There's a lot of work that goes into all the infrastructure you're seeing around you. So
Right. Thank you.
thank you so much. That's a great idea.
Any additional questions for Ben? Seeing none, I will call for a vote. All in favor of moving items B1 and B2 to the full council? That's unanimous. So moved. Okay, we're moving at a clip. Okay, I'm also with C1 and 2. I think since these items are linked, I'm going to move these both together, or I'm going to read them in together, rather. Someone's got to move them. So under Business Development and Tourism, 1, authorize the mayor, Barbara C. Smith, to execute any and all documents to adopt the City of Norwalk Arts and Cultural Plan 2025 as amended, as the official guiding document for advancing arts and cultural initiatives in the city, consistent with the city's design as a state-recognized arts and cultural district. 2, authorize the mayor, Barbara C. Smith, to execute any and all documents to ratify the amendment to the citywide plan of conservation and development to incorporate by reference the arts and cultural plan within Chapter 6, preserving and promoting our historic heritage, arts and culture, including the directive to evaluate, modify as necessary, and implement the plan's recommendations during the 2025 through 2029 planning period. Do I have a motion?
I so move.
Councilmember Dingenshine. Okay, Sabrina, you're on.
I am on, and thank you for not running out of breath as you read those in. Sorry, they're
Surprised I didn't.
So over the past about almost a year and a half now, we've been working with Cultural Planning Group to make an arts and cultural plan for our cultural districts, which covers the South Norwalk and West Avenue, Wall Street areas. We have the largest cultural district in the state, and we were one of the first cities, like actual cities, not just a small town or small municipality, to do this. The state actually uses our application as the kind of be all end all of what a great application is, not to pat myself on the back, but because we were one of the first biggest cities to do it and have a thorough accepted application. We're kind of the shining star and setting the example. A lot of other municipalities aren't really prioritizing funding the arts. So we are very grateful that a year and a half ago that the council approved doing an arts and cultural plan, which specifically is required by the state, but a lot of municipalities just haven't prioritized it or haven't afforded to do it. But I think the exercise ended up being really amazing for us. We got a lot of great outcomes. We had touched base with a lot of community members, but also a lot of artists that we may not have seen before or spoken to before. So we're really excited about this plan. A lot of work went into it. And I'll throw it over to David and Martin to be able to actually go through the plan. We're not obviously going to go page by page, though I encourage you to read it. Has a lot of great backup information and comparisons to other cultural districts, but also some great recommendations of how we can move forward with some low-hanging fruit, but also some long-term goals as well. So David and Martin, I know you have a presentation, so feel free to throw it up there.
You're still on mute, Martin.
Yep, sometimes we just forget to do that, don't we? We just start talking. All right, so I was just going to pull up the presentation. We have a quick presentation to share with you. Whoops, it's not granting me permission. Just give me 1 minute. Sorry, I had a computer thing that, okay, we should be all set. I should be set now. I should be able to share this. Okay, I think we're in good shape now. Okay. So we're just going to quickly talk you through a little bit about the background and the process here, and then talk about an overview of the plan, about what are its highlights, what are the key parts of it, and in particular around the district, talking about the core functions and the things that were uncovered through the process to really look at, and a little bit of conversation about funding approaches and really what implementation means, and having some time here to talk. The first thing we're going to do is go through the planning process and the engagement. I'm going to actually turn to David to just do a quick summary of that and share some information with you.
Good evening, everybody. We're really pleased and proud to be able to present this plan to you. Some of you, Darlene and Steve Kepper, who's no longer on the call, but were part of our steering committee. So you've been along with us for the whole journey. And as Sabrina said, it's been a little more than a year. We started in January of 2025, and we had the draft plan pretty well buttoned up by December. So that's the document that you have in your packet. So a couple of words about process. Sabrina mentioned we touched a lot of artists and art stakeholders in Norwalk. As you can see from the slide here, we had a strong emphasis on stakeholders who are either part of the arts and creative sector, or were part of the geographic area of the district. So a lot of stakeholders from the business community, the development community, certainly city staff. And we spent time in individual conversations. We met with Josh at one point last spring. And you can see here we met with artists, restaurateurs, developers, property owners, arts organizations, and staff. We also did some big open and invited meetings. Artists and creatives met with us at Space Cat for a brainstorming input session and a little bit of beer and pizza. We had similarly a business mixer at Space 67, where a number of property owners and business owners from the district participated. In addition, we wanted to get input from the general public in Norwalk, and we did a community survey that generated 390 responses, and we'll share some of the results of that survey with you in a slide or two. I want to mention also that the steering committee, and this was very much a stakeholder involved steering committee. Their roster is listed on page 5 of the plan. Was exceptionally involved. This was not a formality. This was a group that really rolled up its sleeves. They showed up, they talked, sometimes they argued, and their fingerprints are very much on the content of this plan. The next slide, please. So what did we learn? We learned that top priorities for the Arts and Culture District are first and foremost connectivity. It's a big geographic area. We'll talk more about that in a moment. And they want the district to take specific steps to increase connections among the sub areas of the district and among the people who live there, as well as people who visit the district. Infrastructure was another top topic. People noted that there need to be additional efforts to reinforce kind of the clean and safe atmosphere of the district, lighting, wayfinding. In addition, artist support is a specific priority for this district. This district should lift up artists, arts and cultural organizations, creative businesses, and help them to pursue their careers and reach the general public. Historic preservation, of course, is a priority for the district. There are historic properties, some of which are considered threatened. So the district is intended to make specific steps to support historic preservation and the work of your commission. And lastly, management capacity. Many of the members of the steering committee were well versed in nonprofit or municipal management. Some were business owners. So there was a lot of talk about how to create a management structure and governance structure and funding that would, make the gears go around in the district, so that it would not be a lovely vision that doesn't have the management platform to support success. This plan also unearthed several tensions, things that need to be balanced in the implementation of the plan. One's the geographic scope. This is 2.5 miles from north to south. It's a big area, much bigger than the benchmarks that we looked at. Again, more about that in a moment. So that's something that needs to be dealt with. Also, development versus displacement. As you all know, this area of Norwalk has been through tremendous change and development in recent years. There has been gentrification and some displacement. So stakeholders really want the district to have specific policies and goals in place to balance the trade-offs of gentrification and to reap the benefits. And lastly, the district can be a powerful tourism generator, and it can be set up to do that well. Stakeholders also flagged the idea of first meeting the needs of residents. There's a large residential population in the district, much larger than most districts that we looked at, and that population will continue to grow. So again, this is another set of competing priorities that can be reconciled and balanced. Next slide, please. So we have several slides from the survey to share with you, just to give you a taste of community opinion as opposed to the stakeholder opinion that we heard so much from our interviews and the steering committee. So the first point here is that 71%, almost 3/4 of survey respondents mostly attend arts and culture outside Norwalk. So there's a lot of latent demand. People are going, but they're not going here. And the number one barrier we encountered about participating in the arts in Norwalk is people don't hear about what's available, 57%. So this underscores the need for better communication, marketing, promotion, visibility, and districts are an excellent tool to accomplish that. Next slide, please. We tested a range of activities that might be provided through a district to see what people responded to. And this is a very happy slide. The two green bars are the interest, and you can see there's a lot of green on this slide. There's 2/3 or more favorability for each activity or event that we tested here. So outdoor performances, festivals, celebrations, food trucks, gallery events, kid and family friendly events, monthly art walk. People are interested in everything. Next slide. We also tested interest in public art. There's good public art already in the district, lots of murals. And we just wanted to go through the step of testing it. And we see again a lot of green, a lot of somewhat and very interested in all the forms of public art that we tested. So one of the things this indicates is that public art in Norwalk can continue to open up. Murals are wonderful, but there's a lot of other forms of public art that people are aware of and would like to see. It's a pretty sophisticated audience in Norwalk. Martin, do you want to say anything about the buskers sign on the slide?
Yeah, so I'll take the performing arts piece. So one of the things that came up, and we heard this a lot from stakeholders, was, in terms of activating the area, enlivening the area, was the idea of spontaneous street performers. And if we look at across a number of districts around the country and beyond, actually, busking is something that is not just spontaneous, but is organized and planned, and places are created throughout districts and areas that are become known spaces where buskers can do their work. And what David's referring to is I just happened to have an opportunity to visit Edinburgh this past fall as we were doing this, or right before we actually put the plan together, and was quite taken that they had signs all over the city instructing the buskers on the policies. I particularly like that, nothing after 9 p.m., particularly because when you walk around Edinburgh, bagpipes are everywhere and they're quite loud. So a little bit different than the kinds of things you might see in busking, but policies are prevalent in really well-run cultural districts around the world, and something that would need to be looked at.
Okay, next slide, please.
Yeah.
As Sabrina mentioned, we looked at 6 other cultural districts to just kind of get some best practices, comparisons, lessons learned. And you can see we looked at Boulder, Colorado, Fort Worth, Texas, Knoxville, Tennessee, New Orleans, Philadelphia, and Portland, Maine, where Barry Dunn apparently is located. Next slide, please. So one of the key conclusions, lessons learned from the benchmarking was that all of the districts dealt with management and funding and that kind of infrastructure to make the gears go that we heard from the steering committee as well. Districts are not successful unless they have a good organizational platform that can produce events, market and advertise those events and activities, stay connected to the community, provide funding and resources where it's needed, and many other functions. So that's certainly, we see that across all of the successful districts. Another lesson learned is consistent year-round programming. People want to have the expectation that when they come to the Norwalk Arts and Culture District, there's going to be something interesting to see or do. And lastly, most districts, the common wisdom is they should be compact and walkable. They should be pretty small and easily It should be easy to find your way around it. So that's not what we have in Norwalk. So we really feel that one of the takeaways is that Norwalk should leverage its large area. It provides some benefits because it has several overlapping enterprise, historic preservation zones, enterprise zones, other zones that helped define for the city what the district should be. And they provide benefits. But dealing with the large area for us meant, and the steering committee means looking at the districts as a collection of several sub areas. So Wall Street in the north, through Waypoint in the center, and to Sono and Washington Street in the south. So the district would be really programming and marketing 3 sub areas as a part of its work. Norwalk also has a great creative community to leverage. It has you have your maritime heritage, historic property, great inventory. Your cultural diversity compared to all your nearby cities is really a strong point. And as I mentioned, a large population of people who live in the district and are natural stakeholders. So these are all assets to be leveraged and celebrated through the district. Next slide.
I think this is
And now let me pass to Martin to talk about the content of the plan itself.
great. Thank you, David. So, it was, just to reiterate something David said early on, which was this was, really a wonderful and thorough process. We had extraordinary involvement from businesses, from creative entrepreneurs, from artists, from arts organization leaders, and others, and across and throughout the entire footprint of the district. And it really rolls up into these sort of 5 areas to thinking about identity and character, about what the district really means, thinking about it, how to take advantage of the authentic and sort of post-industrial character David talked earlier about. Historic preservation is a piece of that. But one of the things we heard a great deal about throughout is, how do we position Norwalk? How do we think about this district? And I would say sort of the authentic nature of it is one of the things that we heard. That the diversity is the strength. This also goes to the fact that there's a very significant resident population throughout the district. Some of that is newer, with newer developments, and some of that is, particularly in Sono, are people who've lived there for a very long time, neighborhoods that are very established, and the district is woven in and around those neighborhoods. And there's many different characters to the historic foundation, whether it's Washington Street, whether it's other properties, and also the neighborhoods in and of themselves. Geographic reality, of course, is part of the character. One of the things that, as we talk about the sub-districts too, is we talked about that connectivity in the Riverwalk, which is another way of connecting one end of the district to the other, because it does sort of weave through it as well. So core functions, one of the things that we were looking at as organizing the district is thinking about what are the areas of focus. And we pulled this out of the both the benchmarking, we looked at how other districts operate, and of course we looked at what people were telling us was most important to them. Again, as we look at these 5 things, the connectivity and the unification, how do we bridge I-95? Those sub-districts really are 2 of those, the Waypoint area and Sono are bifurcated by the I-95 corridor, but there are ways to pass through that, and can we still connect and unify the entire district by working through that. The marketing and branding is extremely important because, as it says here, wayfinding and promotion is part of that, but creating a unified identity so it becomes a known area that when we're going to Norwalk, we want to head to the Arts District. We want to be able to know, as David said, year round, things are happening there. We build a sense of trust that this is a place where things are happening. Sort of an economic development side of it, 2 pieces. One is the artist support and economic development in general. And artist support includes funding to attract creative entrepreneurs, creative artists, creative businesses. And that's through our affordable spaces when you're dealing with nonprofit organizations, helping support leadership and finding ways that they can be attracted. Using tools of economic development, small business development to bring those artists and those artist businesses to the district. And that goes to economic development, thinking about the foot traffic. How do we make those businesses successful? How do we have workforce retention and support, the kind of activity that's going to have people come and be part of patronizing those businesses. And lastly, of course, the big piece is the programming and activation ties closely back to the marketing and branding, ties back to the connection and the connectivity and unification. The events, public arts, street activation, that's where the buskers come in, many other kinds of things. Activation overall and signature festivals was something that came up as a core function over time that could be a way of making sure there's anchors 1 or 2 or more times a year, perhaps through signature festivals. And also building on things that are already happening within there, but making sure that they're brought in and recognized as part of the district. Dave, do you want to just quickly talk about this?
Yes, we have another slide or two of survey results here. This reinforces what Martin was talking about. We asked survey respondents, we asked residents, what should the district do? What should it try and accomplish? And you can see, once again, lots of green on the slide, the favorability ratings were across the board for all of the functions that we tested. So ensuring places are clean and safe, promoting available events, promoting Norwalk artists. You go down the list and they align closely with the 5 functions that have been now codified or grouped together as the functions of the district. Next slide, please. This last slide of the survey is a little bit more subtle. We ask people not so much what they wanted to attend or what the district should do, but we wanted to ask a question about what the result of having a district should be. What outcome should it produce for the community? And you can see once again, there's high agreement on all of the different choices, but people want to see a district not just provide arts to, keep people busy, but to beautify vacant spaces, to attract businesses to downtown. People are well aware that that's important to not just economic vitality, but to community vitality. Boost Norwalk's reputation as a creative community. People are very proud of Norwalk's artistic and creative heritage and feel it's not as well known as it could be. And on down the list. So people are aware of that districts can be more than a cool place to go and have a drink or to see a busker, hear a busker. It can produce important results for the community. And next slide.
So, and this is in the back of the plan is a fairly extensive implementation grid that looks at the several phases, it looks at the priorities. And if we were to look at management and governance in particular, and we synthesize that down in here in this case of one slide, it's really divided in looking at sort of the first to 3 years as the opportunity to really establish the district and how it's going to operate. If we look to phase 2, it does talk about transitioning to an independent bid structure, a special services district, but we need to lay the groundwork for that, and what's laid out in the plan is that first few years, through City Business Development and Tourism Department, managing the district, doing many of those functions as possible, starting to do the work about thinking about wayfinding, creating an identity for the district, starting to program it. And important with that is thinking about dedicated staff who would be hired to do that. Because currently the department has a lot of other functions, and this would just be significant work that would be on top of what they're already doing. So we do recommend that additional staff is hired to do that. And then going into the second phase, which is developing a bid or putting in place an independent bid structure that would fund it. So when we talk about funding in the next slide, the first few years, it's about the city investing and getting the infrastructure up and running, and then transitioning to the community supporting it through an independent bid. And we should say, we didn't show a slide for this per se, but in our engagement, we tested this idea with the business owners, with the people in the district, and very, very strong support. We heard very little resistance to the idea of a bid. In fact, for people who are very strong, many of them even before asking, would this be something they would support, said, we should be putting a bid together to support this. I think that's not something that's going to run into a great deal of resistance. In terms of actually going into implementation, our recommendations are establishing somebody who would be specifically responsible, perhaps as an executive director, and supporting them with marketing and program staff. Because it can quickly grow into, particularly if you're talking about year-round programming and the work to put the infrastructure in place, that it's quite a significant. And the recommendation also includes having the current advisory board transition for those who are willing to be on this in an advisory board, to transition into being a steering committee to identify and invite additional stakeholders in before it transitions into a bid structure that would have an advisory board into place. So the funding is really, in a sense, sort of three-tiered. In the first 3 years, it's critical that the city look at a multi-year approach to funding the startup of it, commit to establishing and funding the kinds of pieces of the infrastructure pieces. And by that, we mean perhaps, doing the work of creating a brand for it, doing the costs, which can be part of the capital budget of establishing wayfinding. You want to create an identity for the district as you begin to draw people to it, and creating a physical and geographical sense of how do we distinguish so that somebody knows they have come into the district. So that's where the wayfinding can come into it, and the branding is a big piece of that. And then primary funding goes into the second phase, where a bid or a special services district is put into place. It'll take that first 3 years to organize it, to get to get it into place, get everybody to agree to it, and to establish it and get the funding started. So there is startup and then the primary. But there's also opportunities for other kinds of funding that can happen, whether it's through capital funding, other kinds of grants that through private philanthropy, business and corporate sponsorship, program revenue and memberships. There are other ways to connect people, to create ownership, to establish excitement for the district and get the entire community involved in it and beyond. And there are grant programs out there. There may be some, for instance, through the State Arts Council, which organizes the district's program. Doesn't specifically fund districts, but the district itself will be eligible to apply for funding for programming, for instance. So those are the highlights. There's obviously a lot of information. I think there's, I forget how many pages of support material to the plan. There's a very large appendices that has a lot of the research and a lot of the benchmarking information. But at this point, we just want to open up and answer any of your questions, clarifications, and see how we can be helpful at this point.
Do you mind taking it off share, Mark?
Sure, no, I'd be happy to.
Does anyone have any questions? Councilmember Wennerstrand, then Councilmember Fryer.
Got to unmute. Thank you for the presentation. It was really, really exciting and helpful. I want to touch on the last item, which is funding. And I'm sure there are going to be other questions about that. Could you say a little bit more about, so some of these other arts districts that you referenced and that are in the report, and I don't know if this is an answerable question, what has been their sort of ratio of public to private funding to really function successfully? For instance, like Boulder, is that data available just as kind of to look at what's the proportion of sort of city funding to state funding to grants, et cetera?
It would be lovely. It would be
Is
lovely.
that a unicorn I'm asking about?
Well, first of all, we didn't analyze the financials of the 6 districts. We did look at their sources of revenue.
Okay.
And the truth is, Martin, our firm, and I have done a lot of work with cultural districts around the country. And we've also looked at state programs that designate and support cultural districts like Connecticut's. I think that, Martin, what do we count? 17 states that
Yeah, I
have.
think the last count was 17, there may be 18 now, but
So when you talk to the state programs, you also get an overview.
Mhm.
And the truth is that cultural districts are incredibly idiosyncratic.
Okay.
They differ one to the other. So we were startled to find conclusions and lessons learned that we could draw from looking at 6. But I think more to your question, all of the districts rely on a diversity of revenues, and that's what the recommendations call for. So while we say the city's going to take the lion's share of startup costs because somebody has to, it's just a practical reality we feel. But the fact that property owners have expressed openness to one or more bids in this geographic area was certainly music to our ears, but it also shows that there's community support to do the kinds of functions, fulfill the functions that a district needs. So the third part of that three-legged stool is all the other funding sources that Martin mentioned, program revenues, grants, sponsorships, memberships. And other districts do rely on these as well, even when they have a business improvement district in place. So we see it kind of as that the district managers should be actively developing as a management strategy, should be looking to diversify revenues from the get-go. And last thing I would say is that we learned a lot from the district in Philadelphia, in Martin's home city. The Philadelphia Arts District, like Norwalk Arts and Culture District, has a big residential population. It's a very swanky part of downtown Philadelphia, and there's a lot of high-dollar residential real estate. And they have a very active residents association that are essentially volunteers for the arts, the arts district. They produce events, they have social activities, but they also contribute.
Mhm.
So I'm saying that this is the kind of thing that the management of Norwalk's Arts and Culture District, we've tried to direct them to work towards that from the beginning of the implementation.
And then, and just on our side, a lot of this is stuff we're already funding. Like we're already funding events, we're already funding the Arts and Cultural District, we're already funding the Art and Public Places program, we're already funding marketing. So it's not like this is going to be like a big, huge nest egg that we're going to all of a sudden request. It's kind of gearing us up to switch to a new management structure once a bid is formed. And I will say, we're grateful for the state's support up to this point. They had just asked us for a multitude of data points from each cultural district that they've ratified because they are going to ask for funding going forward. So we'll be able to receive funding for the cultural district, but also spend within the cultural district, which is really exciting. And one of the qualifiers to accept funding is having a plan in place. And right now we're the only municipality that does. So it sets us up for a really good spot to receive funding moving forward.
yeah, and if I can just add to David's comments, first of all, I would say, David, that Mayor Parker of Philadelphia would love that you described it as a swanky place. So we'll keep that in mind. But again, diversity is key here. Both as Sabrina and David have talked about that. But there are a couple things that are important. One is that thinking about what are the priority startups, about where do we need to invest to really begin to give some infrastructure in place that really, if you talk to people in Norwalk right now, they're not really aware that there's an arts district. So there's just creating that brand and creating that sense of this is a place, and then making sure that anything that's happening within it begins to be identified as part of what's happening within the district. So, it doesn't take a huge amount of investment, but it does take startup capital to do that. Many of the districts are funded through bids. Many are funded through other kinds of either special services districts, taxing districts, other kinds of community improvement grants and programs. Many of them are operated by downtown partnerships, which tend to be bids, of their own nature, but they're operated, and so it is idiosyncratic in that way, depending on And there may be other opportunities. Membership may be something, particularly with all the
Right.
residents, to get them to identify to say, hey, I live within the arts district, right? So
Mhm.
it's something that they can become proud of, and they can have a sense of ownership about it.
Mhm. Thank you.
Jim?
First of all, I'd like to congratulate you gentlemen for putting such a comprehensive study together. I spent the better part of the afternoon reading through the fine print, and it's really
Thank
phenomenal
you.
piece of work. So,
Thank you.
Thank you.
um,
Thank you.
so I had two areas that I wanted to cover, and the first one is what Anne brought up was on the financing, and in talking to you guys and looking through the details, I got the feeling that in the first year that the incremental cost to the city, notwithstanding the people that or the effort that Sabrina and her team are putting out right now, would be more or less just somebody that would be the titular head or the director of the district. Am I right there? I mean, initially that's the real outlay that the city would have to come up with to fund that head or that staff.
Yeah, potentially. Although I would actually, what we put as a set of recommendations, and not there is an implementation plan, but not what I would call an operating plan. And I would say from our perspective that Sabrina and her staff are an incredible resource here, and I think that that they have a clear sense of this plan. And I would certainly look to them to say, you know what, this is what we can handle, and this is where the increment would make a big difference in what we can do and being able to move this forward. So I think when you get to the on the ground operational piece, we do believe that having somebody designated and giving them that additional assistance would be helpful. But I would also defer to the department to say, hey, this is where any incremental investment would be best served, and appreciate their direction on it.
Jim, I will
The
say
second,
when we were making the implementation recommendations in this plan, it was unclear if the Business Development and Tourism Department would have one staff person or continue with 3 people. It will most likely continue to have 3 people. So at this point in time, I don't see us adding another staff because we've have enough to kind of cover what we do currently. And I won't say enough, but we're okay. I will say that there is a benefit to somebody focusing specifically on the arts and cultural district moving forward, but I think that will come in more when there's a bid structure in place, when there's somebody who's going to be managing the bid, managing the funds, all of that good stuff. As of right now, I think our team is specifically going to look at the implementation measures of this plan and work on them. We specifically changed the 2 titles of the other 2 positions in the Business Development and Tourism Department to be able to have these as some of their job responsibilities. So I think we're going to be well set up to actually act on this plan rather than it just waiting until we eventually hire staff. So I think we're going to push forward without asking for additional staff.
so we can get traction on this before we have to go out and actually start spending money to build staff. Okay,
Exactly.
great. The only other concern I had was the size of the area that we're talking about. In the other areas that you mentioned, I'm familiar with Portland, Maine, passed through Boulder, Colorado, but those are really kind of condensed areas. They're very, very walkable. Even Portland, you got to go up and down a hill or 2, but it's a very walkable area. Where we're talking about between South Norwalk and Waypoint is a fair distance, about 2 miles, I guess. And then from Waypoint down to Wall Street is also a fair distance too. My concern is that, we've got 3 separate areas, and maybe everybody congregates in South Norwalk and gets tired of going to Wall Street or vice versa. How do we make sure that we each one of those areas holds their own, and holds the triumphant together, the Holy Trinity, so to speak.
Go ahead.
You want to start on that, or
No, go ahead.
I can
Sorry.
take this.
Finish it, just finish it. That's all.
I can take this because we've had this conversation a few times. Our district is really large. That's no question about it. It's the largest one in the state, and it'll probably remain the largest. The purposefulness of doing that is that we wanted to make sure that we're able to fund more connection between the two districts. I don't really think the intention will ever be to kind of erase the identity of both and make it one arts and cultural district. It's more this area you go to for certain things, and this area you go to for other things. You go here for the Wall Street Theater, you go here to eat, that kind of thing. I also think when it comes to designing wayfinding and signage and those types of things, yes, there might be a consistent brand, like welcome to the Norwalk Cultural District. I don't think it's going to be something that's going to wash away the rest of the identity of the districts. I mean, they look different now and they will remain. Also, when we talk about historic preservation and preserving identity, that was something that was pretty apparent in the plan, but also in every conversation that we've had, to maintain those things and to make sure that they're kind of stays how it was, not to gentrify, but to uplift the diversity that we have here. So I don't think that the intention is ever going to be to work towards making this area one, but more making it interconnected to be able to do separate things in all these different parts of the district. So it's never going to be Sono's gone and Wall Street's gone and Waypoint's gone. Now it's just the cultural district. It's more like, no, this is the cultural district where you could come to for all this great economic activity and arts and cultural activities, but these are still separate neighborhoods in their own right.
No, and I get that. I know the separate neighborhoods, they've always been separate neighborhoods. They're separate cities at one time. And you know, it's in their DNA that they're going to be separate. And you know, everything I read in the plan seems to be cohesive, and nothing saying, okay, South Norwalk is going to be the restaurant center. You know, Wall Street's going to be the theater district. You know, it's like having Fifth Avenue and off Broadway. You know, that's two different districts, but it's all one cultural area. And I'm just hard to understand how the whole thing's going to come together.
I think a piece of that is going to come when we do the branding of the district. I think it'll be an interesting conversation to have, but I think in my mind at least, and where we've chatted on the plan a few times, that it's going to end up being the Norwalk Arts and Cultural District, but a sub-district of each of these neighborhoods. Like you described, like in New York, it's one cultural district, but you have a distinct identity and a distinct place to go. But I don't think we delved that deep in the actual planning document, but I think that will come out when we're actually implementing the plan.
So for example, you know, not to belabor this, but you know, Wall Street, you've got our NOCO up there right now. So and you got another theater there. So that's almost like a theatrical area. Whereas you have South Norwalk, where you've got Washington Street, where you've got kind of a restaurant row, some of them empty restaurant row sometimes, but nevertheless. And then you got Waypoint someplace in between, which is maybe the ritzy neighborhood that everybody wants to live in. Okay, I get you. I think it's a challenge, but I think with the plan that you've got there, you know, we'll see how it develops.
Councilmember Degenstein.
Thank you. First of all, I'm going to redouble what Councilperson Jim Freyer said, and that is that this is an amazingly comprehensive plan that you've presented. I'm really impressed with it. My second point is, in full disclosure, that I am an avid supporter of the arts, it goes back a long way. Before I was in Norwalk, I was in Rockland County, and there were a number of aspects of the art that I had dealt with there in New York. And even going back to college at Washington University in St. Louis back in the Stone Ages, I was co-chair of the Washington University Festival of the Arts, which was citywide and actually regional in its scope. I know that it is possible to do this. I also think just addressing the concerns about the geographic scope of what is being presented is that there's a symbiosis right around the corner, and that is that the primary transportation node in Norwalk is going to move within the next 3 years to the South Norwalk train station. And whether we have a jitney that connects the dots, the 3 nodes, or whether we have that as part of the standard transportation area, I think that part of it will work together. I just think that there are so many opportunities for symbiosis to occur that it can work. My primary concern is gentrification, and that people who are have a stake in the community already may be displaced. And I think that also can be worked out through planning and zoning and other aspects. But I'm excited about moving this forward. I am a little bit concerned about the economy, and that we may have to slow walk the first step in this. But certainly the first step is marketing, making people aware of what we have and the potential of what we have.
Thanks, Jan. And that, to your point, gentrification came up in almost every conversation we've had. That's why we're putting so much importance on making sure that we're prioritizing historic preservation, prioritizing affordable housing. Came up about 100 times, I would say, in almost every conversation, especially with the artists who are here and live in the community. A lot of them struggling to afford to stay here. Certainly not our intention, and definitely will be on the top of our list of whenever we're implementing anything, is really to have the residents involved that are currently there, to make sure that we're not, creating something that will eventually push them out. Because the main point that came up was that we like the diversity that we have in people and culture, and we certainly don't want to see that go away anytime soon.
Councilmember Seed.
Thank you, Council President. So yeah, to that point, I think again this is a great plan, and I definitely support it. But I think just echoing some of the concerns, and kind of leading into gentrification is like what it comes down to is really like how are we going to afford this? And we could talk about like affordable housing and all this stuff, but if the city is going to pay for it, it's going to come from taxes, and taxes can be a big factor in gentrification and pushing people out. Not just renters, but homeowners who can't afford the tax burden. So I think, and we spoke about it before, even when it comes to the events, it's just really trying to find ways to build partnerships and gain funding so that the burden isn't solely on the taxpayers, because they are reaching their limit. So I definitely support this, but I think that you just be mindful, because part of protecting the diversity and combating gentrification is really going to make sure that we don't keep adding to the tax burden. And that way we just got to get creative and come up with ways to make sure that we can do great things like this to help the art culture and the arts in here in Norwalk.
Jalen, we 100% agree. And I think that's why we spent so much time on this plan, to make sure that we're providing alternate funding sources. Number one, arts always falls to the bottom of the list when it comes to funding prioritizations, and in any government structure, including at the federal and state level. So making sure we're diversified enough that if one of those sources goes away, that things don't end and kind of the train keeps running. So I think a majority of this is hopefully going to be funded by a bid or SSD structure, which the redevelopment agency is already looking at for these areas, and then quadruple kind of layering on other types of funding, especially state funding that we're excited that might come down the pipeline now, specifically to us directly. I think will be kind of their main sources of funding to do a lot of these things. However, we've looked at like the Arts and Public Places program, which is kind of a flexible capital spend specifically on installing new public art or new, historical signage, those types of things that have been funded in the past. We're kind of working within those budgets to be able to start implementing with what we already have. So I think we totally understand and we totally hear you. And that's a big reason why we had a lot of focus on different funding sources rather than just a capital or operating budget on the city side.
Thank you.
I'd like to add, if I may, Councilmember Sabrina's right. This came up a lot, and it was a topic of debate throughout the planning process. One of the things we learned in investigating Connecticut's rules for special services districts is that you can exclude properties from the assessment. So there's a big opportunity. It's going to sound like I'm contradicting myself. Because the district is so big, there's a lot of property that can be assessed for the Arts and Culture District, but also for other services, in these geographic areas. But residential single-family properties can be excluded from the assessment when the original definition of the business improvement district or special service district is created. And that's the opportunity to help protect people from unwanted tax increases when all they're doing is living somewhere near, Washington. Does that make sense? Great.
That would
Yeah.
apply, excuse me, that would apply to property owners that live within the district, is what you're saying.
Yes, but we can exclude certain uses within the legislation when we first install the bid. So we can say, okay, only commercial property is going to be included in this. So that wouldn't cause a single family homeowner or somebody who's living in a 2-3 family home to have to pay into anything additional than they already do.
We have to do that in a very careful manner because one
Yes.
of the objectives we have is to attract commerce. And we have to be able to prove from the get-go that the benefits that will occur from the taxes that will be levied will far outweigh any of the negatives that taking money out of one's pocket.
Exactly.
No
And
question.
Yeah.
The redevelopment agency in presenting eventually a bid structure will include a cost benefit analysis specifically to increase foot traffic, tourism, increase customers, increase sales, all that fun stuff. So we're looking forward to when that happens, but it'll definitely be very prominent when we start talking about this.
Yeah, and one other thing I would say here too, and I think that what Councilmember Degenshine and our majority leader said is one of the things that we've been dealing with ever since the reval is that our property tax distribution is kind of out of whack, where more of the burden falls on our residents than on commercial properties, even obviously with the big caveat that some of our apartments are considered commercial properties, but it's a very out of balance. And a plan like this is actually one of the benefits, I think, if it goes well, is by attracting commerce and attracting, what follows, frankly, cool art and opportunities for creativity is a way to try and right size something that's now been out of balance for a couple of years. So I just keep that in mind as this is, an investment. And also, frankly, we've been looking for a while, and Sabrina knows this just about as well as anybody, in building relationships with the private sector, and building relationships with businesses, in and around Norwalk, to help invest in our community. And plans like this help make that possible. Designations like the one we got from the state level, thanks to our delegation, and the various state agencies help us do that. So it's all, I see it as one big puzzle in which we're all sort of actually heading toward the same thing. And I join in the comments that everyone else made, that this is a very comprehensive plan, and I deeply appreciate the work that you guys have done.
Thank you.
So one thing I just want to, and Sabrina, I know you said it before, and I know just because it's different than the usual process, and Sabrina laid this out, I think, well in the memo that precedes the plan regarding what the next steps are here.
Yeah, so I can explain that a little bit. So, Plan of Conservation and Development Amendment gets approved a little bit differently than a traditional just planning document that we're operating off of. Because the plan was actually recommended in the Plan of Conservation and Development, because we completed that task and we want to include these implementation measures as completing that task, but also as addendums essentially to that completed task. The council approves, which is tonight, you would approve going to full council to make these amendments, and then the full council would approve to make these amendments, and then it goes to planning and zoning, which is where they'll have a full public hearing on the plan and the amendments, and then following that meeting is when the Planning and Zoning Commission will actually approve to amend the plan. So instead of just going through council and then the check is done and it's a plan that we follow now, it goes through multiple processes. So we've already been to the Arts and Cultural Commission. We've already been to Planning and Zoning for a general overview to introduce them to the plan and what the recommendations are and what the edit to the Plan of Conservation and Development would be. And now we're here, and then we'll be on council at your next meeting. And then following that will be the Planning and Zoning public hearing, and then the Planning and Zoning review to actually approve the plan in its entirety to amend the document.
Yeah, and just as a reminder, and when we say the document or the plan, we're talking about the POCD, and that is a plan that is approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission. We have a role, but the way, by virtue of, I believe it's both charter and ordinance, is that the Planning and Zoning Commission actually approves amendments to the POCD like this. So I just want to remind, especially for those of you who are new, that this is a slightly different process than normal, sort of the normal council process. So with that in mind, I will call for the vote.
Excuse me, Chair.
Sorry.
I'm sorry. I listened to everybody, but I just really wanted to say thank you to David and Martin. It was good to see you all. I realize I recognized your faces.
We did the
just
interview
thank you
together,
for the
darling.
work that you did. And to you, Sabrina, and just everybody. It was a lot of work, but you came up with a really solid plan. And I hope that it moves forward in a way that is meaningful for the city. We don't know where we're going to end up with the budget and just the way things are going. And but this is a very comprehensive plan, and we may come to a point where we're going to have to prioritize what really are the few things that we want to stay consistent with this plan and our Arts and Cultural Committee. So thank you. And a lot of work you did, Sabrina, and everybody. So appreciate it.
Darlene, when you raised your hand, I was just looking for the chat function to send you a little note of thanks, because you were there at every steering committee meeting, and you were part of that process. So I was going to thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right. Now, I will call for the vote to move items C1 and C2 to the full council. All in favor? And that is unanimous. Thank you,
Wonderful.
everybody. Wait a minute.
Thank you.
One more motion. Darlene.
Oh, motion to adjourn. Everybody
There we
wants to stick
go.
around.
All in
you.
favor. Thank you,
All right.
everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Good night.